Okay. All right. So let's go and discuss this issue. He says, under what circumstances we had said that if a family is of wealthy means, then a wife cannot be controlled by her husband as far as who gets tzedakah. So he says, "Hinei b'shulchan aruch kosav gabay tzedakah in makabel mehanashim and mehavadim and mehatinogos eladavar muat." So we saw this quote in the Shulchan Aruch that you're not allowed to accept, if you're a fundraiser, you can't accept anything less than a small donation from a woman or a child of the person who controls the money. But how much is a small amount? That goes according to the wealth of the family. He says the reason for allowing a woman to give a small donation is because we assume it's an umdana, it's an assumption based on our eyeballing a situation that a husband doesn't mind if a woman gives a small amount. The Rush says this explicitly about tzedakah shenadra. He says, as far as when a woman makes a pledge, he says, even though, says the Rush, you do accept from women a small amount of money, that's when all things are equal and you have no other information. Because we assume the husband doesn't mind. But if a husband says explicitly, I don't want you to give even a penny to charity, then it seems like his wishes have to be supported since it's his money. However, he says, but in that same tshuva, the Rashba, or a different tshuva actually, the Rashba writes, Dashi Cholos Benos Yisrael Latet Avar Mu'at, the Gabait Staka Rashai Litol Mehen, Shadas Haba Olim Kach. He says husbands give their wives permission to give small donations. Chamoshik Asafti B'Sof Sefer Perik Bavakama Tanu Rabbanan. Gabait Staka Lo Chimi Mena Davar Mu'at Avalo Davar Meruba Vakol Toloi B'Mashanagu B'Chol Makom. He quotes the Gemara and then he says it all depends on the minhag hamakom. Arei shaharashba nokat shehaheter umishum shekacha minhag. He says the Rashba also adds this little twist over there, basically saying it's not just up to the husband's personal decision, it's also based on the minhag hamakom, right? In other words, if the convention of that community states that a woman does have a certain amount of control over the household finances, so then a husband has to abide by that. Uvapashtus harashba v'harash amru osam advarim elasha otam dvarim elasha harashba hosav shemdana shemisama bal enu makbid yitzreh haminhag or yatzreh haminhag. He says the fact that regular normal husbands do not object if their wives give small amounts is the basis for this communal standard. And so Bishut Rashba Kasav Zilashona. So the Rashba now quotes a different tshuva, and he says, Sha'alta hada amrinan mekablin mehen davar muat avolo davar meruba. Mi amrinan heicha de lo goli daite de mistama lo kapti in shi, aval heicha de goli daite lo nicha leid lo odilma lo shna. So the Rashba asks this as a question. He says, what if a husband says, I don't want you to give a penny? Does a woman still have a right to give based upon the convention of that community? Tshuva. So the answer is la'olam hecha de goli goli, de lo amru elam ipnei she'ein haba olam makpidim, ha keshehikbid hikbid v'chulei. So the Rashba answers that no, if the husband does say explicitly he doesn't want her to even give $1 to mishulachim who come to the door, you have to respect his wishes. Alma kula milsa mishum de lo kapid balabayasu agila daitu v'hikbid kipeta so kipeda. So we see that if he does mind and he does express the fact that even small amounts he doesn't want to give, you have to respect his wishes. He says He efshar lekabel mimena. So he's just reiterating it. V'hatam lazeh. He says the reasoning is the bishlamim hayachiv al abal mikoach haksuva lases kesef liishto letzarch tzedaka az osochiv hayachal alav behetem leminhag v'lahayit lo efshar limchot klal. He says it's one thing if the terms of the ketubah, meaning when they got married, if it was clearly negotiated and that was the terms of the relationship, the terms of the marriage were that the husband says, I will provide you with clothing, I will provide you with food, and I will provide you with a stipend, part of which you shall give to tzedakah at your discretion. If that was part of the marriage agreement originally, then a husband would not have the ability to renege on that commitment. But once the husband, but that was not part of the terms of the relationship. And therefore, a husband has the ability to basically say, I don't want you giving even $1 to anyone, to any meshulach who comes to ask you for tzedakah. That's when he's the only source of income. Now, but even when she's the source of income, she has to really technically relinquish all of the funds to the husband unless she is willing to forego the husband's sustenance. Oh, that's a very good question. Yeah, that becomes the husband's obligation. Since the husband is the controlling party on the funds. Now, this is usually not how relationships are set up. But technically, if the husband says, I want us to live according to halacha, so everything I make is mine and everything you make is mine, and I'll make all the decisions in the house, lots of luck, buddy. But that's technically the way things work according to halacha. Now, does a woman have a right to say, Eini nizoines ve'eini oseh? I've decided that I'd like to work on my own. I will not, you have no financial obligations to support me. I will support myself. And you have no obligations to take care of me in any way. Yes, a woman does have a right to do that. But it's usually, so that the Gemara does give a woman a right. But in a situation where the husband is, let's say, the husband is making 80% of the income for the family, and the wife, or 85% or 90%, and the wife has this side, what do they call a side hustle, right? She's got something on the side that she does, right? So in that situation, she doesn't have a right to say, whatever I make, I'm going to put in a separate account, and then still live off of my husband's good graces. If the husband says, I'm not happy with that, the halacha would side with the husband. But many times husbands are very gracious and they do allow their wives to do their side business and not eat into the family funds. Okay. But he says, Ulam beves lechem Yehuda ala shulchan aruch kasav b'shem shut mara minz v'zeloshono va'afilu ba'oda tachtav imhi ba'alas tzedakah v'ratza salitein likroveha davar nachon lefi oshra kederach nashim ashiros eina bal yachol limchos biyada. So this sefer, which is Beis Lechem Yehuda, it's a commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. He quotes the Mara Mintz, who's already going back to the times of the Rishonim, and he writes that when a woman is married and she wants to be charitable and she wants to give tzedakah to her relatives in a manner that is commensurate to her wealth, because she's married to a wealthy guy, the husband does not have a right to protest. Now, this seems to fly in the face of everything we've just learned. So he says, "V'tzarachin ki l'chora mashma sheyesh machlokes ben harash v'hanal shenakat shabala yachol limchos lamrot sheyesh minag lebein b'haramit shenakat lo shabala lo yachol limchos b'makom minag kamo shemashmi mimashakasa kederach mashim ashiros." He says, and that seems now that there's a machlokes. The Rashba seems to say that regardless of whatever the convention of the community is, if a husband says he's makbid, the woman cannot give. And here the Marimin seems to be saying, if this is the convention of women of wealth to give charity, the husband cannot protest. Ve'ilu midivrei habeis lechem Yehuda shetzite divrei shut Marimins lelo cholek mashma she'en cholek alav. He says, however, The fact that the Beis Lechem Yehuda cites the Mara Mintz and doesn't offer any dissenting opinion, it seems like this is a slam dunk. There's no one who disagrees with it. V'chein mashma mishut rav peilim imasha pasa k'mara mintz v'lo hizker sheyesh misha cholek alav. Okay. Now, v'hinei sham mahara mintz hevi rai l'dvarav mimad de'isa b'ksuvas. What's the proof that the Mara Mintz brings to this statement of fact that a woman can give without, despite the husband's protestations? Amar Rav Huna hamadiris ishto shelo tishal v'lo tashel nafa ukvara yotzi v'yitain ksuva. Now, what's the case over there? The Gemara talks about a case where if a husband is so he lords over his wife to the point where he demands and he places a neder upon her. You may not borrow, nor may you lend out any household utensils or household items. Right? He tells her, I never want you to borrow a sieve, a colander, a spoon, right? And nor if anyone asks you, are you allowed to lend it out? Like he's being a real, son of a gun, right? So in that kind of situation, the Gemara says, Yotzi, v'yitain ksuva. If a wife comes to the Beis Din and says, I can't live with such a guy, the halacha sides with her, and the husband has to divorce her if he's such a kapdan, and he has to pay her ksuva because she's legitimately claiming that he's not a suitable husband. And the Gemara says, why is this? Because she can claim that this is causing me to have a bad reputation, that I'm becoming a recluse, that I'm not willing to be generous with my neighbors. Okay? Hainu sheyesh chiyuv al habal meikar hachiyuvim shebein ish leishto leafsher leishto lahashil kelim v'chein latet litzdaka kedei shelo lahasiya lashem ra. What you see from here is that part of a husbandly duty is to make sure that his wife has a good reputation as being a good balabasta, as being a woman who is friendly, lends to the neighbors different household items, and gives tzedakah. That's the argument of the Mara Mintz as to why no, her argument is, I'm saying, her argument is, my husband's being a control freak. I can live with that, but I can't live with the fact that people will think bad about me. I'm going to get a bad reputation. That's the argument. Yeah, she basically can say it kills me that people think that we're misers. Lefize nira lanius daiti lechalek shebenidon shel Mara Mintz legabi isha shebayla asher imhu lo marshala lases kederach nashim ashiros azu mesia la shem ra v'lachein hu chayav laafsher la latet tzedakah. He says, if according to this argument, if a woman comes with the argument that she's going to get a bad reputation because my husband's not allowing me to give tzedakah, then the husband can't protest if she wants to give charity just to be able to save face and to maintain a reputation as an upstanding person. Ve'ilo b'nidon shel harash b'lagabi isha she'ein bayla asher, afilu she'eno lomar shelo loses klal, eno misia la shemra. He says, but in a situation where the woman is not of a higher financial status, in other words, the family, they don't live in Forest Hill. They live in a very modest home. They don't have a reputation of being wealthy in the community. So there a woman can't say, you're giving me a bad reputation when I don't give, because there are a lot of people who can't afford to give every mashulach who comes to the door, right? And therefore the husband no longer has any obligation to maintain his wife's reputation. And on that basis, a husband can protest. This is, to me, a fascinating tshuva. I have to say that I'm fascinated by this tshuva because, first of all, it's a very subjective line. Where does one draw the line? But if a woman were to come with that argument and say, do you realize how this makes me feel and how I look in the eyes of other people who come to the door? Here we are. We have a Lexus in the driveway, and everyone knows that you give a lot of tzedakah to the shul or whatever it is. And when this poor meshulach comes to the door, I can't even give him a dollar. I can't even give him a small nedava. She says, how do you think that makes me feel? People think that I'm the bad guy because when they come to the door, I don't give them anything. So if that's her taina, al pi halacha, she can say to her husband, yeah, she can say, halachically, I have a taina against you. Let's go speak to the Rav, right? But in a normal situation where the husband is not a wealthy guy, and just, where the appearance could be that, we just don't have the money right now to be able to give to the mishulachim who come to the door. A husband can tell his wife that he's makbid and that he doesn't want her to give, and she has to listen to him, despite the fact that other neighbors do it. So there's that fine line where a woman can say to her husband, "Oh, all the other women in the neighborhood are giving to the mishulachim. How come I can't?" He says, "That's my decision." But if she comes with the taina, "You're making me look bad," so because now it's soiling my reputation. Yeah, she has to come with that taina. Exactly. So that's the thing, is that, so first of all, I believe this has many applications beyond Hilchos tzedakah. Like, what would be a possible application, right? I want to be able to go out every week. I want to be able to take a day to spend with my friends and go out to lunch with them. That's what the women of the community are doing. And the husband says, "No, I want you to stay home. You have household responsibilities. You got to do homework with the kids, yada, 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 yada." If it's become a community convention that there's a ladies' night out, and the girls get together and they all socialize together, and the woman feels that she's being singled out by her husband and is not being given that freedom to go, she might be able to make this claim. I'm trying to remember if I've ever had a situation like that. I'm trying to remember if anyone's ever come to me with that kind of shaila. I do know that there are situations of husbands who can be very controlling, and it doesn't usually end well. It usually is. I mean, it could be vice versa also, where women. No, they stay up all night learning. Yeah. But
what if the wife says, what you're doing is impacting my reputation also? I want you to stop.
You're making me look bad because you're doing that.
Yeah, you make me look good because you're husband, you should play poker all night, whatever.
Right. So could a woman make that claim against her husband that his behavior is impacting her reputation? Right. Yeah, it might. I don't know. It's an interesting shaila. I mean, usually if these kinds of shilas would come to the Rav, it's usually a sign that the marriage is in trouble in general. Well, the truth is, you can add in anything in a ksuva that you want, but that's not the minhag ha'olam today. Everyone uses a standardized ksuva. In Eretz Yisrael, they do add dollar amounts. And dollar amounts change. A person can put in whatever dollar amount they want. And that, I think I shared with you, I don't know if you were here that day, that I had a situation like that, where a girl, I was doing a Masada Kiddushin for a girl who was Israeli, but was living in the States. And her father was a Rav, and was really Meshuggah. like really mentally insane. Very, very brilliant man, but like nuts. And he wanted me to be Masader Kiddushin using the Israeli ksuba and put in a figure like for $250,000. And I said, we don't do that here. That's not the minhag ha'olam. And the chassan was going nuts about it because his father was a rabbi also. And he didn't want anything to diverge from the standard. And I said, so I told the father of the kala, I'm sorry, we can't do that. That's not the minhag hamakom in the United States. And then he said, fine. And then he came to the wedding, and at the chassan's tish, he tried to swap out the ksuva without my seeing, like thinking that I wouldn't notice. No, I'm not kidding. Yeah, the guy was nuts. And it held up the wedding. They almost didn't get married. It was about a 2-hour hold up to the wedding. I don't know. She moved away. I've tried to track her down, but I can't tell whether she's married or not. Yeah. Yeah. Well, the only thing they generally add in is how much the amount. They leave that blank in the Israeli ksuba.
I don't want you giving any stock. I want you to stay home. I don't want you
Yeah.
lending anything to anybody.
Yeah, those things you won't find in the ksuba. You won't find them. Yeah, just the amount. So by the way, like when your son gets married in Israel in a couple of weeks, there is a dollar amount that's put in. Yeah. It's usually, I think it's now up to about $250,000. US dollars.
Those zeros.
So I'll ask what the standard is. I'll find out. Yeah, I think Rabbi Tradbergs will be there, so he'll help me, provide me with some guidance. But yeah, so the ksuvas are much more serious there because the Beit Din, whenever there's, God forbid, a divorce, they will actually look at the ksuva and see what the payout is, right? And the truth is, they're doing it the right way in Eretz Yisrael, because the whole idea of the ksuva was to create a disincentive. You know, it's got to have teeth to it. Our ksuvas in Chutz La'aretz really don't have teeth. You know, what is it? It's the amount of 200 zuz. It's like 15 or maybe 30. It's up to 30,000 Canadian dollars. You do, but it's unfortunate that we don't use the mechanisms of Jewish law to protect the woman. We have to rely on secular law. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody. I hope everyone had a good, meaningful Tisha B'Av, and we'll continue.